unless someone corrects me.
I'm gonna be recusing myself from the next thing on the agenda, because it directly affects me.
Okay.
What is it?
Resolution concerning tax relief for elderly and disabled persons. John, would you like to address this as well?
So this resolution concerns the possibility of making modifications to the current senior and disabled tax base in town. So the way it's currently set up, the reason why we have a tax raise in town is because the state passed a law back in the 70s that allowed us to do so. Prior to making any changes to the program, we need to get permission from the state. So what this resolution does, it does not specifically change anything at all. And sort of, I think to focus the discussion on just the possibility that at some point a council could make the changes. This is the first step. Requesting that the General Assembly modify current laws to give the town council the authority to make changes. What those changes are would be the subject of a very of a detailed process. Our charter and I believe state law provides what exactly that process is. It includes publications in newspapers, public hearings, multiple readings of any such ordinance. So rather than getting into specifics of any possible changes that could be made, this just opens the door to making changes.
Changes to
Okay. Are you making a motion? Motion to adopt this?
Yes, motion to adopt resolution.
Can we ask for discussion? Is that okay?
No,
Wait till I
making a
do it.
motion on the table,
Thank you.
really, that should be first, and then we'll have
Got it.
discussion.
Motion to adopt resolution requesting the General Assembly to grant the Town of Foster Town Council the flexibility to make modifications to tax relief ordinance.
Is there a second? I will second. Discussion. And so Mr. Savassi is in first, and then Mr. Donovan, and then Mr. Guillermo. So go ahead, Mr. Savassi.
Yeah, in 1990, I tried to do this, and I had statisticians and all kinds of people work on this document. The estimates were that in 15 years, the taxpayers, not the elderly taxpayers, the taxpayers would lose $15 million. I think, to alleviate this gentleman's concerns, I think that the town has made a contract with the people that are already on the tax rates. And I don't think you can change that, but in general concerns, there are presently 10,000 people a day retiring or 65. That means in the United States would be 53 million people retired by the end of the baby boomers, okay? The town in its population, or just general United States population, let me look around this room. I'm gonna guess everybody in this room is 45 or older.
Thank you.
Right?
Just
So within 15 years, everybody in this room and most of the people in this town will be on the elderly and disabled tax freeze. He's only 22?
Yeah, he's 17.
Okay. Originally, and there's no legal, I'm not a lawyer, but truthfully, the elderly, and Roger Hawes ate me alive on this. So, Carl Riccio and Brad Gorham and Boyd on the other side.
Get to the point, please.
Yeah, you can't, this is a user's tax. It doesn't state it, but it is a user's tax because the whole argument that night that went before the town financial meeting was, I don't have any kids in the school, so I should be on the freeze, right? But they already had kids. run through the schools. And for the most part, okay? This is generality. They already had kids run through the schools, and at that time, people helped them support the usage of the schools. Then somehow, when I became 65, I became a certain prestigious citizen and got on the elderly and disabled tax freeze. And don't ever have to pay back what I took. I understand all the arguments about people keeping people in their houses, but I believe, there's two attorneys here, I think there's a state law that will not allow the town to put an elderly person out of their house. So the fear that people will be put out of their houses and stuff, I would hope isn't true, and I would hope as a community would help them. But the idea that more and more people are gonna go on the elderly and disabled tax freeze and pass a bigger and bigger burden onto young people who move into this community. And we have a 7-year turnover, or we did, when I was on the planning board, we had a 7-year turnover. That means people move in, and like Mr. Mr. Renzi says, he came here with one view, and he'd love to get the hell out of here now that he found out what the problem is, okay? But you can't sell your house anymore, because when I first spoke about this, I said the higher taxes go, you will drive valuations down. And we have driven our valuations down by what happened by the feds, but also there's 100 houses for sale in town that nobody can afford. And the people that can afford them, the bank owned, and they've reduced the value by half. And the people that are moving in are young people with kids who, we just had 6 kids enter the schools in the last 2 weeks. So when you create turnover, right, you have more kids entering your schools all the time. When you have foreclosures, I don't understand the 77% tax collection on housing, because eventually when the house changes hands, the bank or somebody has to pay the back taxes, even if it goes to tax sale. So that's the side. But I would hope that you follow Mr. Restivo's suggestion, protect the elderly people who are on it, but somehow set some set of rules for people who need to enter, either an income, a residency, there's about 4 or 5 of them. So the attorneys know more about it than I do. I'm getting older, forgot all the other things that towns put on it. But there are many things that way to handle this. Thank you for letting me take this time.
Mr. Donovan?
Yeah, as I said earlier, I read through this a half dozen times this morning, and I guess my first question is, did we have an attorney write this language? Who created this section 1? I ask because I've never read anything that was so arbitrary in my life.
It was done back in 1974.
No, not this section. Section 1 of this resolution
Oh,
was done in
resolution.
74.
General laws.
I think it was on the
Yes, I drafted this language in my capacity as a council member,
Okay,
with the intention that it be as open-ended as possible.
well, it's beyond open-ended, it's arbitrary. Before any further discussion goes on with this, you need to have a solicitor look at it, because there's just, it may, at its discretion, some or all, may be granted, deems reasonable, determinations of eligibility. It's just, there's nothing concrete here. I don't know what you're going for.
Well, so in order for any changes to be made, as I mentioned, we need the General Assembly to give us the authority. This gives us the authority.
This gives you a
We
blank
think it's
check.
appropriate. Right, and so the General Assembly only meets 6 months out of the year. If we instituted the process now of even just formulating the request, it seemed unlikely to me that we'd have any chance of making changes
So you're gonna withdraw this?
No,
Okay.
no, the intention is to make progress.
Okay, I don't look at this language as progress at all.
You know, to go to Mr. Savazio's point, I do think we have a moral, I'm not sure about a legal obligation, a moral obligation for people who are currently on the freeze, not to modify it. People make plans, they have retirement plans, and I think it would probably be overstepping reasonability to actually to upend somebody's retirement planning.
To Mr. Gavasio's point, I get the crux of his point, as we have an aging population. Is that pretty much it? That's continues to grow?
All populations.
Apparently nobody dies.
It's saying all
But-
populations.
Yeah, but the reality of it is, our over 65 crowd in this town is only 12% of the town.
Right now, yeah.
Kelly, do you know how many tax freezes we have in town?
Close to, it's close to 400.
I gave you that. Do you recall how many it was?
No, I just
It was
wanted
well
to-
over 300, and I got 35 new applications this year.
My estimation, looking at the census data, was 352, but you'll assess us, you know exactly right.
I think the impression that I've certainly been given in my discussions with our finance director, our assessor, a number of people who have experience in dealing with our budget is that the current situation is unsustainable.
Absolutely.
And unless changes are made, something more drastic is going to need to be done.
I'd like to see the math that says it's not sustainable.
Well,
I'm sure that that would be part of any justification of actually making a change.
Okay.
The specific math would be there, and the specific proposal would be
So in
there.
actuality,
I want to,
there would be, I have questions, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
that's okay.
I've highlighted several things because I agree. It's very open-ended. And listening to you now, I understand why you made it open-ended, but this was scary. I agree, we need to do something. We have to look at the tax freeze and the tax relief. But just looking at the tax relief ordinance we have here, perhaps if we enforced what we have, we could do something with it. It says here, the date said person filling said statement first occupied said real estate, and a statement showing whether said real estate has been occupied continuously. Well, do we have people that are not living in that house that are saying it's their house and they're somewhere else and somebody else is living in their house?
they have to live in the house a certain amount of days.
How do we
per
know
year.
they're doing that?
My understanding is that they certify it, and if it later comes to the assessor's attention that that certification was fraudulent, then there are ways to assess them on taxes that were inaccurately claimed to have been exempt, but I don't think our assessor has the capability to enforce
Right,
that.
well, and that's where I think things need to, I think we need to look at the ordinance we have and see if it's being followed.
Well, you
Denise,
need
I'm gonna
to,
recognize
you need
Mr.
to
Guerrero
get
for this.
permission
He
from the
hasn't
General
spoken.
Assembly to change that.
Right,
That's right.
and I understand what,
And that ordinance also
I
says that you only have to live here 1 year to get a tax.
it doesn't
Right.
say, in
Mhm.
our ordinance, it doesn't say,
Yes.
because I looked after we had our discussion, I cannot see anywhere, unless I'm missing it, where it says you can live in town for a year, and unless it's a state level, but our town does not say it.
So it doesn't establish a longer
No, it does not,
residency.
it does not.
So you have to live on your.
But I do feel, and I am not a lawyer, so I do feel that it's very open-ended, and the things that I have highlighted are taxation relief that it deems appropriate, in its discretion, without limitations, it deems reasonable from time to time. That was, I don't know, it's kind of carte blanche. care. I mean, it seems like it's very nicely written, but that scared me.
I guess it's carte blanche to come up with a new ordinance, that's what it is.
Exactly.
That initially there was no ordinance, and then when the town enacted it and it was enshrined in state law, it became carved in stone. So there's absolutely no latitude for us to change that unless we back the clock up and telling, asking the state, okay, now we want to consider this. If we were to rewrite an ordinance, then any tax relief ordinance ultimately has to go back to the state.
Mhm.
So this would only initiate the process whereby we could have the conversation. It doesn't take anything away from anyone, it just allows the town to talk about it. At this point, we can't amend it. We don't have the authority to amend it.
This certainly isn't the ordinance. This language is not the ordinance. This is just
Right.
to have a
Permission.
discussion.
Permission to have-
And
It's
any
not the ordinance.
subsequent changes were the council to adopt an ordinance, as I said, through the procedure that we're required to follow. Any subsequent changes after that would likewise have to follow the same.
Public hearings, readings, more meetings.
I still have reservations.
Actually, I saw Mr. Durango's hand next.
Yes, unfortunately, I fall into that category. In reference to what Mr. Savazio said about, I sent my kids to school, I don't have kids in school anymore, why should I pay? I personally do not feel that way. I feel the school system is part of the community and it should be supported by everyone. While our kids were in school, we did pay our fair share at the rate at the time. So yes, at the time we paid our freight, and now in the later years, even though we don't have kids in school, part of our taxes still go to support the schools. I'm very fortunate, let's just leave it at that. But there are people in this town, like I said earlier, are living on Social Security. You cannot expect these people to pay the tax rate on a house that they've lived in for 50 years, that the going tax rate in the town. They're gonna lose their home. And that's not right, after they've been here all these years.
And nobody's proposing that tonight.
But they're talking about this thing is wide open, I don't have a copy of it. My point is, you said we don't want to miss, the door is open, we don't want to miss it. My take on it is, let the door close and we're doing just fine. Where is there money being lost? Definitely. Is it enough to make a big difference? I don't know. I don't know what the numbers are. I'm sure it makes a difference, but is it going to make a big difference? And younger people moving into town, and as I stated earlier, older people are dying. So,
Okay, Mrs. Ryder?
Just getting back to the resolution, is this the normal procedure when you go to the state, that you, give an up, I don't know, what do you want to, you have introductory resolution, you know, that this is what we want to discuss, okay, without any specifics, this is what we want to discuss, can we have the discussion? Okay, not can we have the discussion to raise the age to 75? Can we have the discussion to do it based on income? But just is this the usual, is this what you do? I don't know.
It really can vary. It's really up to the state, how much latitude they want to give to the citizens.
It just, question now, this resolution, I know in order to change the ordinance, but would you have to have a resolution to change the way you enforce the ordinance that we have? You would suppose because there are some people in town where well, just very simply, that you would ask people to show that they deduct the mortgage payments or whatever from their income tax, that they submit. And just so that, yes, I am the primary owner of this building, I take the deduction on my income tax.
That's what the tax assessor's job is. The council doesn't need to get involved in those details.
Okay, So it's just how
The
you
tax
do it.
assessor's job is to evaluate each person who's asking for an exemption by her standards, whoever's in that job now, by her standards, and make sure it's all uniform, and that the people moving into the town and the people that are in the town know the deadlines, know the, if there's a bracket or something, whatever it is, it's her job to make sure that the people know what they can ask for and when, and that whatever paperwork they submit is legitimate.
So she can
Council
change
doesn't
the
get
kind
involved
of
in
paperwork.
that. She can pretty much do anything she sees fit based on
But
tax
to
assessment.
have more, to broader changes, you need to get this foot in the door, so to speak.
I think so, we cannot change it.
Right, I
We
understand that.
cannot change it because it's enshrined in state law. We don't have the authority. Anything that we change has to go forward to the state. So this is just asking, enabling us now, roll the authority back to the town so that we can address it.
Just one other point, when I was looking for the state law that originally created, that originally gave Foster the authority to create the tax freeze, first place I went was online. They had a list of all Rhode Island state laws, and I couldn't find it there. I found it for every other municipality in the state except for Foster. It's because when it was passed in 1976, I believe, 1974, they had a separate way of keeping laws that pertain to cities and towns. So I had to actually go to a book, believe it or not, in a library and
You know, they
and
do
dig it
have
out.
things, they have ages,
This
and
day comes.
they're called books, yeah. I know, I actually have to go to a book.
But the point was that this has been changed in pretty much every other community since then. Whether it be a change in the age, a change in income level, a change in residency requirements, just not here.
So my point is, this resolution would be kind of a standard thing rather than open season on the elderly. I mean, because I think that's how it could be perceived, is open season on the elderly in Foster.
That's how it's written.
I mean, I don't know.
Mr. DiPaolo, then Mr.
Has an analysis ever been done to try to determine the 350 or so, 352 people that we may lose, that may move out of town or may not come into town? 352 younger folks might come into town with 2 children that we're gonna have to send to school. And we're gonna have to pay to send those kids to school. We're gonna have now 700 more kids to send to school. Am I right? So,
The question is, has an analysis ever been done? I don't believe so. That would be something that would have to be done along the way.
okay, my second question is that tax freeze in the charter?
No.
No, it's an ordinance.
No ordinance?
I would get Mr. Savasio.
Just real quick, okay, I think I gave an example, and I was trying to be general, so I may have confused some people, but yes, I did those analysis when I did my report. I gave the council a 5 or 10-page document done by attorneys, statisticians, and everything else, and they blew it off. And I'll give it to you if you would like. Denise, to your point, if 20% of the people who are currently on the freeze are cheating, okay? And we're only halfway through the baby boomers, all right? So if there's 200 people on the freeze and 20% are cheating, that's 40 people. But you have full expectation if you don't change this, another 200 people are going to enter in the next 15 years. So you catch 40, but doing nothing, you add 200 people to the freeze, okay? That's as general as you can get. And if you can't, and I'll give you another generality. Social Security is built on, somebody puts some money in and some money comes out. The freeze is built on absolutely no money going in, just money coming out. Now, if Social Security is going bankrupt, I want to know how we're floating this mess on the backs of somebody. That's as general as I can get about this.
Thank you.
Mrs. Rogers?
On the agenda, we're supposed to be discussing the resolution, not the entire senior tax freeze. We're talking about specifics of the tax freeze, and it's
He's
the
got it written in the resolution.
whole
He's got
tax
all those
freeze?
methods are written in there as a proposed ordinance. I
Is
haven't
it?
done it that way.
Oh, okay,
The
I haven't
proposed
seen the whole
ordinance
thing.
is kind of written in, which is why I'm not stopping it.
I thought we were off topic, I didn't see it, obviously, I thought we were just talking about a resolution.
Actually, the way it's being done now, resolution first, is a much more open way for the council to do it. In my estimation, they don't have to do a resolution. A council person can propose an ordinance and go right through the way that any normal ordinance would go through. Then you have to get by the state. You're still gonna get by the state. But the point is, I think this is a much more open way of saying, this is what we're thinking of, can we get a consensus? I don't think you really had to do this. I just think it's a very forthright way of saying, we need to talk about this, and telling everybody it's coming, it's coming. This is what we're gonna talk about.
Further discussion, further comments?
Is there, the proposed ordinance, where is it? Is there,
There isn't.
can we,
There is not yet a proposed ordinance.
It's a resolution.
the proposed resolution?
There's
I'm
language
sorry.
in the resolution that could lead to a discussion.
Is that resolution somewhere?
Yes.
They have it, it's not.
I'm all for it. I'm not gonna be old for a long time.
Don't kid yourself.
I just had a new heart put in, so I'll be good for another.
Oh, it's got tuna.
They gave me a 20-year go.
If the heart is from a 40-year-old,
Yeah,
and you're
what's the
60
target?
years old, you have to average you to be 50 years old and qualify for the freeze.
You got it.
It could be the Grinch, or the Grinch.
You got a
The Grinch is hot, you got, okay.
Okay. All right, so the motion on the table is to adopt this resolution to send to the state asking us for authority to revise the senior tax freeze, senior and elderly tax freeze ordinance. Vote will allow this to go forward to the legislature. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, one other thing.
Yes?
If I may. I think, I understand Mr. Rogers wanted to recuse himself, but I think when you're dealing with, what is it called, large population, I think he could sit at the table and vote on this because it's for a large That's been some ethics things I've read. But,
I'm sure you can get an ethics opinion if you'd
well,
like.
maybe, yeah, maybe he would.
I wouldn't, if it were me, I'd err on the side of caution and
Okay.
not to get involved, personally involved.
I agree. If he's comfortable recusing, better safe than sorry. Okay, I'm gonna call for a vote then. All those in favor of this resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion carries 3. 1 opposed, 1 recusing.